My name is Parole Officer Wangerson. Today is Friday, January 24th, 2025, and this is the Public Act 23-169 hearing of the Connecticut Board of Parks. For the record, I apologize, Mr. Gilhooly, the state of Connecticut passed and made effective October 1st, 2023, the Public Act 23-169, an act concerning parole eligibility for an individual serving a lengthy sentence for a crime committed before the individual reached the age of 21 and criminal history records erasure. You fall under this act, and this means that you are under the age of 21, that the board shall give great weight to the diminished culpabilities of juveniles as compared to adults, the hallmark features of youth, and any subsequent growth and maturity displayed while we're reviewing for suitability today. The following board members are present this morning, if I state their names on the record, certified they include all statutorily required documents in preparation of this hearing.
Nancy Turner, good morning.
Good morning, Joy Chance.
Morning, panel member Rodriguez.
Thank you. In attendance this morning, we have Attorney Julia Wilson. Attorney Wilson, if you could please state your name, juris number, and business address for the record.
Yes, good morning. Julia Wilson, juris number 445570. My business address is 1 Court Street in Middletown, 06457.
Thank you very much. Also present today, we have State's Attorney Christian Watson. Attorney Watson, if you could also please do the same, state your name, juris number, and business address for the record.
Sure. Good morning, Christian Watson. I'm the state's attorney in New Britain. Juris number is 42042, 20 Franklin Square, New Britain, Connecticut.
Thank you very much. Mr. Gilhooly, can you please state your name and inmate number for the record?
Peter Gilhooly, 279038.
Thank you. This is a public hearing in accordance with Chapter 14, Freedom of Information Act, Connecticut General Statute 1-200, which applies to this procedure. Mr. Gilhooly, if you have any questions concerning the above, please bring your questions to the attention of the panel at this time. Again, this is a public hearing. Mr. Gilhooly, do you have any questions?
No.
And are you willing to proceed with the hearing at this time?
Yes.
Thank you. So as previously stated, this is a Public Act 23-169 hearing. It's being conducted in consideration of the parole application for Peter Gilhooly, inmate number 279038. Mr. Gilhooly serving a sentence of 35 years flat with no probation to follow for murder and attempted murder. There is no victim input in this case. There is an offender accountability plan in place. It has been reviewed and shows that he has completed the following programs that include SRG program, Voices, People Empowering People. He's currently participating in the CLIC literacy program and is reportedly a mentor within People Empowering People. Utilizing the statewide collaborative offender risk evaluation system, the offender's overall score in the RT falls within the moderate range risk for recidivism. Mr. Gilhooly, this is your opportunity to express to the board why you believe you should be granted parole, and you may begin at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Gilhooly,
Yes.
are you planning to read the letter that was already submitted to us?
No, I have a brief one that I wrote for the board.
Great, because we only have 90 minutes for the hearing, and I'd hate to waste too much time on something that we've all already read and is 5 pages long. So
Yes.
Go right ahead.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much for this opportunity to be heard and a second chance at life beyond prison. I would like to send my deepest apologies and sorrow to Mr. Oleski and his family, Mr. Monko and his family, as well as my co-defendant and his family. I know nothing I can say or do can bring them back or change that day. Even with all the accomplishments, which I am proud of, I can't make up the loss of Mr. Oleski and Mr. Monko. I take full responsibility for my actions of that night. With all the program I've done over the years, Voices has helped me fully understand how deep my crime affects not only the victims, but their family and friends, the community, as well as family as well. I would like to also apologize to my family as well for all the heartache I caused them. I was the first and only person to graduate their GED in Northern, which I am very proud of. I also feel everyone should take Voices because it shows you how to take full accountability for your actions and how to look at your crime, even when you may think it's a victimless crime. When you can have empathy for the victim, I feel that's when you can genuinely say that you're sorry. While working in the Colvin unit, it makes you appreciate life in a different way. I put my health aside so I could help others in need. Unfortunately, I seen death as I worked there and things that I will never forget, but I also help people get better as well. I just wanted to help others and would do it again. I've been a peer mentor in 2 different programs, A Way Out and now in People Empowering People, which I both received certificates in before becoming a peer mentor in both of these classes. I was chosen both by my teachers and peers to become a mentor, which made me proud. If I can change at least one person's way of thinking from negative to positive, I feel that is a win, even though all would be great. I feel when you can talk with the younger ones, they really listen because I've been through it, so it's easy to be relatable and real, rather than someone they don't know that they can't relate to. I tell them you have to take responsibility for your actions, crime, attitude, as well as if when you catch tickets in here. I used to not listen and have I don't care attitude, but when I finally realized that my poor attitude in catching these tickets meant my family couldn't see me or hear from me, it made me change my way of thinking as well as my ways and actions. That's another responsibility as well I take fully in my tickets. Over these past 25 years, this journey has not been easy, and I've made mistakes, but I sit here in front of you as not the same kid I came in as. It wasn't easy, like I said, but with age and with accountability, I've changed. Also, my support system, I give credit to as well, who has helped me with changing that negative thinking to positive. My wife that has been by my side for 18 years, who I hope to live with, and my mother as well as family and friends, all helped in this journey. I have a strong support team and I have stability that will help me with success upon my release. I have multiple job offers I can start right away, and I know there will be struggles, but with this strong support and strong motivation, I will be a success. I know this letter may seem short, but I also didn't want to keep on saying the same things over and over again I put in my submission letter to this board. I am open to suggestions and any questions you may have for me, and thank you again for this opportunity. I am very grateful.
All right, thank you, Mr. Gilhooly. I'll begin with the questions and my colleagues will follow up with their questions. So an admittedly tragic situation and absolutely unnecessary crime. So you had been burglarized, your home had been burglarized, and you reported it to the police.
Yes,
And then it happened a second time. And instead of reporting it to the police, you went hunting for the person you thought was responsible. And you chose not to report the second burglary because you had firearms that were stolen. And you didn't want to have to admit that to the police because you shouldn't have had the guns, right?
yes.
Okay. So why did you go to this particular abandoned building?
I went there that night because I was told that the person that burglarized my house, Mr. Roberto, was there at the time.
And you went with your co-defendant, who was a relative and a juvenile, and you went in possession of a loaded rifle, correct?
Yes,
So I was, I always take particular interest at sentencing about whether the defendant makes any remarks or not. And you did apologize for your crime in taking the life of a human being. You said, I just acted recklessly that night without thinking. I never meant for anybody to get hurt. And I that's just so implausible. I don't even know where to start. So when you decided to take responsibility for the choices that you made, and the fact that this trajectory that you and your co-defendant were on could have been interrupted at multiple points with the gun jamming, with shooting somebody upstairs and then you felt, you had to display your own manhood to this child and shoot the gun as well. Talk to me about your responsibility.
Yes, like I was the older of the two of us, and I do take responsibility for that. And honestly, I can't tell you why everything spun out of control that night. I'm not gonna, use the excuse of drugs or, it spiraled out of control too fast. And
I'm not even appreciating how it spiraled out of control. You went hunting for another human being, you went into an abandoned building, and you and your co-defendant randomly shot 2 people. How is that spinning out of control?
because I didn't think nobody was, there, and I didn't know what was going on.
But when you encountered individuals in the building with your flashlight, you could see they were human beings. You didn't leave.
No, you're right, I didn't. And the victim of Mr. Orlowski that I take responsibility for, I didn't know who that was. There was no light. I'm not making any excuses, but I didn't know who that was at the time.
Mr. Gilhooly, I would argue that you're responsible for the shooting of both individuals. You were there.
Yes.
You were the one who was robbed. You were the one seeking retribution. You were the one who went hunting.
Yes, and I take full responsibility for that, absolutely.
Well, you just sat here and said that you named one victim that you were responsible for. And I'm trying to put on the record that by virtue of the way this situation went down, you're responsible for both individuals being harmed.
Yes, and
So
for Mr.
talk to
Munko
me
as well.
about the impact on the community that you referenced, Voices taught you. How do you think the community was impacted by this night of shooting?
It put the community in fear. It put the community, they didn't know what was going on. They were scared of their life, and everybody was impacted by that because nobody knew what happened and they didn't know what was going on. So with my actions, it caused a ripple effect because nobody knew what was going on. And, there's a shooting going on next to people's houses. There's stores there. There's other people there. So with that being said, that it's the community was affected by my terrible crime.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you to define the community. What community are you referring to?
The people in places around.
Around New Britain? Is that what you're
Yes.
saying?
Yes,
Okay.
around the
Okay.
street that.
There's another community that was affected more specifically, and that's the community of homeless individuals surviving on the margins of society in New Britain, taking shelter in abandoned properties, seeking services at soup kitchens, being targeted with violence through no fault of their own for absolutely no good reason. Right?
Absolutely.
And, when you talk about ripple, you can take a ripple effect across the Atlantic. I mean, this individual who died was from Poland. He was in the US to earn money to send home to his family. He was struggling to do that. And that's why he was living rough. So taking him out of the lives of his family back in Poland, left his wife to support his kids on her own, left his parents without a son. So very profound ripple effects, not to mention the injuries, life-altering as they were to the other victim. So, I understand you said, in the interview with a parole officer that you didn't know why you shot the individual. So
Yes.
that's concerning to me because we're making this decision about whether it's appropriate for you to finish your sentence all 35 years out in the community under supervision. And you're telling us that you discharged a weapon at another human being and you don't know why. Help me.
The reason why I said that is because he wasn't, he wasn't, I didn't mean to do that to him. It was,
I get that you regret it, but I don't get that you didn't mean to do it. You were holding the weapon.
yes,
It jammed and you cleared it in some way or another, and you pulled the trigger a second time. Defenseless victim. There was no danger to you in the moment, or your co-defendant. Was this recreational?
no, it was not.
Was this retribution?
I at the time of the incident, when I went there, I didn't know if they were part of Mr. Roberto. I didn't know who they were, and
you didn't stop to ask.
no, I didn't.
Because if you really wanted to have a conversation, you wouldn't have gone there in the dark to an abandoned building, and so, I think this was your intent, was to harm. Maybe you didn't get the right victim, but so why did you have firearms in your home?
For protection. I was shot at previously, and that's why I had it. And two, being robbed in my own house. I had a daughter and the mother of my
Did you
child.
go through the proper channels to get a permit?
No, ma'am.
Where did you acquire the firearms?
From the street, illegally.
So, a series of very bad decisions on your part that led to where you are right now.
Yes.
So you acquired these guns in the street. Where did you learn to practice aiming, discharging, cleaning the weapon? Never did?
No.
Okay. Do you hear the absurdity that you think you can protect yourself with a gun you don't even know how to use?
At this age, yes. At that time, I thought
you referred to it as lifestyle.
something like that, yeah. But as of now, thinking of all these years that, I'm older now, that was absolutely the wrong decision, the wrong impulsive behavior, just no thinking, no process, any of that. And I should have went through the channels of speaking to the police again, and,
Well, you didn't want to get yourself in trouble. So you could have just let it go, but you weren't in a place to do that because you were obviously too angry at being burglarized yourself. You had a daily habit of marijuana and PCP. Did I get that correct?
the marijuana, yes.
And you're disputing that you were on PCP on a daily basis?
I didn't do it on a daily basis, but I did smoke PCP.
And when was the last time you smoked before this incident?
Before I came to jail.
No, before you killed someone?
Oh, the night of the incident,
Uh-huh. So you were under the influence.
yes.
Okay, that's what I read, but you seem to be disputing that fact earlier in the hearing. So what have you done to address your abuse of these illegal substances?
I took alcohol and drug classes. I took addiction courses.
What were they called? What were they called? Because we have no information about you doing anything to address substance use.
I have the certificate from Criminon. It was addiction drug.
This is the one through the mail order program. Okay, but nothing there in the facility.
Also in a way out program, we discussed substance abuse. And
Okay,
also,
so what did you learn from that or Criminon that's going to be helpful to you when you're back in the community and now marijuana is legal?
yes, I learned that I was doing those drugs to hide my pain, that I was doing it to cover up with what I was really going through. And I know now that I know to talk to people, you know, if I need counseling. I talk to people instead of, you know, drugs. I haven't touched drugs since I've been in prison because I know that it led to nothing but negative behavior. And that's something that I'm not looking forward to ever doing again.
Did you learn anything specifically about the substance PCP?
That is a mind-altering drug, and it's an addictive drug, and causes different mood behaviors, and it's a dangerous drug. It affects your heart, your mind. It's not a good drug.
Okay. I would add to that, sir, that it causes damage to the structure of your brain, damage
Yes.
that your brain cannot recover from.
Yes.
Okay. Congratulations on getting your high school diploma.
Thank
You
you.
did that in 2001.
Yes.
You've gone 6 years now without a disciplinary report.
Yes.
You've gotten really strong evaluations for the work, the jobs that you've held in the facility as chairman and laundry, commissary, industries. And I thank you personally for serving as a COVID cleaner during the pandemic.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate that individuals such as yourself would step up to try to protect other people and reduce the spread of the virus. So thank you for doing that and putting yourself at risk.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So I have some concerns about the SRG affiliations that you've had. 3 times DOC has affiliated you, 1999, 2005, and 2018. You completed the security risk group programming most recently in 2021. Tell me what you've taken away from that program that you've taken more than once.
I took away from it was hard this last time because I knew I had left that behind me, and being in that program, it allowed me to open up and speak to the youth, to not go down the same path as I did. And when you involved yourself in that so-called structure of a family, you want to call it, it's a negative. It was a mirage, and it was something that wasn't real. But at the time when I was a young, I thought that's what I needed in life because I had nobody but my mother. So doing this last classes, I spoke up and I was very open about being distanced from that. And due to that, I was assaulted while I was there. And due to me not being involved with that anymore and leaving that gang life behind me, I was assaulted. And it really teaches you how to put things in perspective when you do things as a child, how it affects you still years down the line. And it made me really,
Are you referring to being jumped out?
yes,
You were assaulted because you wanted to leave the gang.
well, yes. And I
Okay,
was
when was that?
that was in 2001. I mean 2021.
Well, that's the last time you did SRG, but
Yes.
that's when you were assaulted as well?
I was assaulted this last time because I was back in that environment and I didn't want anything to do with any of that. So they were saying, because you're not a gang member, well, now you're gonna get what's given to you. And that's when I was
Trying to
assaulted.
understand, because you were 42 at the time and you're talking about, what you got out of the gang affiliation as a youth. And I was trying to reconcile your latest age and your affiliation status and your statements. So I read that you believe through the programming that you can now talk things out without aggression.
Yes.
Share a little bit more with me about that.
So I learned that, it's when you speak with your words and you thoughtfully think things out now, you get a better positive result instead of just being argumentative or being aggressive or being in a negative mindset. And with that being said, I've turned my negative thinking into positive. So now I'm able to speak to somebody without aggression. And aggression doesn't have to be a physical aspect, it could be a body language as well. So with that being said, it's the way that you talk to somebody as well that I learned. And you don't have to yell, you don't have to use aggression. And I learned that. So now that I know how to use my words properly, speak properly, listen, be mindfulness and open-minded, now I know how to have an open-minded conversation.
So, Mr. Gilhooly, what I'm hearing from you is that you put your thoughts, have your thoughts inform your feelings instead of the other way around. So you're not in a reactive mode going through the world, but you're thinking through your experience, your feelings, your environment, and then speaking and acting from a place of greater calmness.
Yes.
So you're not letting people trigger you.
Yes. And when I was younger, that's how a lot of my tickets happened. That's how a lot of negative situations happened, because I didn't think. I didn't really, I'll be honest with you, I had an I don't care attitude. And with that led to consequences. And I did not think of that. I did not outweigh any of that. And when I started putting that in perspective, and I started seeing how it affected my family, not being able to hear from them, see them, that really affected me. And it made me really change how I was really living. And it's just, it was really sad the way that my attitude was. And I feel that I'm not the same person as that. I'm not impulsive. The COs, my fellow prisoners, they are, they come to me with respect because the way that I am now.
Yes. Modeling for them.
Yes.
how to go through their sentence. Okay. So you've done well to give back there in the facility. What is your plan? I know you've got a good release plan with a sponsor and jobs waiting for you. What's your plan for giving back in the community?
I really want to talk to the youth with violence prevention, anti-gang. I would like to go back to the this.
What do you know about how to talk to the youth? Because believe me, we hear that from everyone.
Yes.
I'm going to talk to the youth. I'm going to be a cautionary tale. What do you know about how to do that? Because right now it's just a hope and a prayer.
Yes. It's examples of being in here with the youth as I am now, because I'm relatable, and I've been through the stuff that they're going through, and if I can speak to them and give them.
I understand your desire to do that, and I understand your messaging. I'm
Yes.
asking you, are you going to affiliate yourself with existing programs and volunteer in that capacity? Yes. What are those programs?
I looked up one program called Campus Youth in Hartford. And I would also want to go back to the House of Bread that helps feed the homeless and people in need in Hartford. I volunteered for them before, and I had a good relationship with them.
When was it that you volunteered with them?
I volunteered with them in the 90s with my grandmother.
Well, that would be an appropriate place to give back, considering the harm you did to that specific community. But it's
Yes.
also additionally disturbing that you had firsthand experience with the struggles of those individuals, and you still took out your rage on them. So, all right. Well, thank you for talking with me, Mr. Gilhooly. I'm going to pass the opportunity on to my colleagues. Mr. Rodriguez?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And my colleague asked quite a few questions that I would have asked already. Your last thing about helping youth, I want to try to understand, because I'm baffled by this offense. I mean, it's just, how are you going to explain to the youth what you did, why you did it, since you're having a difficult time explaining to us why. And I think my colleague gave you some leak stuff, because she told you, was this retribution, was this, and you couldn't respond to any of that other than say you don't know why you did it. And I'm struggling with that. And I hear you taking responsibility. I hear that. I'm not sure if you're taking responsibility for it because you don't know why you did this. So, I'm just, can you help me with that?
Yes. Honestly, I didn't cherish life at the time, and Mr. Oleski is.
I'm glad you said that, because this was a very callous thing that you did. It was there's no feeling attached to this other than anger, other than whatever your anger was at that point. But
that is true. But
I can't even imagine the horror these people must have gone through that evening in the dark, a flashlight put in your face. I just can't even imagine that. I'm gonna be honest with you. It's a horrifying thought to me. And the fact that one person even survived this, you were lucky you didn't have 2 killings at this point. I don't want to take away from the work that you're doing. I understand that, but I'm really stuck on the nature of this offense and how it happened. It seems so senseless.
you're right.
Somebody broke into your home, you would have called the police, even if you knew where they were. You wouldn't have gone there with a gun. You would have told the police where they were, and they would, you could have done it that way. I mean, there was other options to take, but to think about, taking your weapon with you. I mean, I agree with my colleague. You were in a hunt. You were hunting. You were looking for somebody and you were gonna put them down. It's almost like you had already made up your mind. I mean, I'm really challenged by this offense. But again, I do want to acknowledge the work that you have done. You've taken programming. You got your GED. Congratulations for that. I read your evaluations on your work. They were all very good and excellent. I read your some of your support letters. They're all very positive for you. And I do believe that in 24 years you have changed. You're not the same person you were when. I would hope that you would have changed in 24 years. That you're not the same person you were when you came into this situation. But Mr. Gilhooly, the offense is just so without any. I don't know any justification for this offense. I can't even imagine it. And I hope you are really in touch with that, because I don't even think we're not going to hear from the victims today. But I can't even imagine.
I feel the same way. I've had nightmares over this. I can't even, nothing that I could ever say or do can bring back Mr. Oleski. And my actions that night were terrible. It was stupid. It was senseless. There
was no reason for it.
There was no reason for it at all. At all. None of it. Even the situation with my house being robbed, there's no excuses for that. There's none. There's just, I should have took the proper measures and I didn't. And 25 years later, I'm sitting in here after a stupid night that just, and it tears me apart.
I think part of what you just shared, that you just had no respect for life at that point.
I didn't even love myself.
It's probably your why, because you had no respect for life. I
didn't even respect myself, because if I did, I wouldn't have been doing the things that I was doing. And like I said, I don't want to sit here and make excuses of drugs in my environment. I don't want to use any of that, because my actions is what got me here. I know what I did. I think your drug use that night just added to the whole thing at that point. Yeah, that definitely was not a help. But altering your mind at 18 years old that was like putting time, a bomb in your head and just.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah.
And that's why I've done so many things in here to change that negative thinking, because that negative thinking led me down to that terrible night.
Yeah.
And if I didn't have that way of thinking, and I didn't have that way of living, and that stupid code of conduct of the streets, it would have never got me here. It was like I said, I didn't appreciate life because I didn't love myself. And it took me a long time to get here. And
is there any additional programming you think you could utilize? You could use?
In here or upon my release?
In there or out in there? Or?
But that's why I'm continuing to do what I can. And it's very limited in here because of the length of my sentence. They have, yeah. I've signed up for as many programs as I could, even being denied my commutation. I didn't stop and say, oh, look at, I wanted to be good for the commutation. Look at me, help me go home. No, I continue to stay strong. I continue to stay in a positive manner. I didn't go back to negative behavior. I got a job. I continue doing programmings, and I'm still continuing to do programs because I want to be a better person. A better person for me is for better people around me.
I think that's important for you. I do think it's important. The more insight you can get about yourself, I think the better off you are.
And like I said, upon my release, I'm willing to go to counseling, anything to make me that better me. Nothing could be said or said, told to me like, oh, well, why would you go to counseling? No, I need counseling because counseling makes you stay stable, and counseling will help you to keep on giving that stuff back, and not getting those negative thoughts and negative actions. It's just to better yourself.
Thank you for that. And my last question is, what do you see as your major challenge if you're released?
A major challenge will be adjusting to my relationships with my closest people to me. You know, not dealing with an hour visit or a 15-minute phone call, actually being there with somebody, being able to talk to somebody without having interruptions of a phone hanging up or a code happening or something that, you know, locked down, and just being able to adjust and be in society and be successful and not be known as inmate 279038.
Okay, Mr. Gilhooly, right?
Gilhooly.
Gilhooly.
Yes.
Thank you for answering my question, Mr. Gilhooly.
Thank you.
Good luck to you, sir.
Ms.
I
Chance?
appreciate that.
So I just need to ask Mr. Gilhooly to clarify two things for me. But for the record, I do agree with what both of my colleagues have asked and have said to you. So the first clarification that I'm looking for, your interview with a parole officer, you said you didn't know why your co-defendant shot the other victim. Did I hear you admitting that you actually shot both victims?
No, Mr. Oleski that passed, that's the person that I'm responsible for both of them, but yes, but physically, I only shot Mr. Oleski.
Okay. The other one is your SRG affiliation ticket that you received December 20th, 2018.
Yes,
So you said that you were talking to a relative and the relative was talking with you about the various levels and position within the SRG. If you received 2 previous SRG tickets, why would you be having that kind of discussion on the phone?
I didn't have that conversation with him over the phone. I was speaking to a childhood friend, and I asked him if it would be okay if he can buy my wife a present for her. And that person happened to be talking to other people in the facility, and they were speaking about gang stuff, and that's how I was affiliated.
That is so different than what I'm reading.
I understand that.
Mr. Hill.
And yes, that's what the ticket says. But once again, I take responsibility because if I had no past involvement with the SRG, I would have never been in that predicament anyways. So that's why I take responsibility for that ticket as well, because that was my past. But when I was
Despite the
speaking,
fact that you were heard on a recorded phone call.
and on that phone call that is recorded, it says that I had asked him to buy a present for my daughter. And he also asked me if I knew somebody, and I told him, no, I don't know who that person is.
That's not what I'm reading, so we're gonna have to agree to disagree. But, you know, as I said, I agree with all the previous comments by both of my colleagues, and I don't have any further questions. So, thank you, Brenda.
I actually have one more for you. So there's a situation with your daughter. So she's an adult now, but your co-defendant is her uncle?
Yes,
Okay, and she lives with him?
yes,
Okay, so when you talked about, adjusting to relationships with those closest to you, were you to be granted today, you would be restricted from having any contact with your co-defendant, and we're talking about 9 years worth of supervision. So how is that going to work out? Have you given that any thought?
yes. I know that I don't want any contact with with neither one of them. Unfortunately, my daughter chose to live with him, and that's just something I have to live with, but I will not put myself in that situation at all. I don't want any contact with neither one of them.
So you've written your daughter off. Is that what you're telling us?
Well, as her being living with him, I can't, that's not gonna be, we're gonna have to have a separate situation away from there, but at this time, she doesn't want to be away from him. She doesn't even want to talk to me right now. So with that being said, I just know it's just better for all of us not to even talk to each other at this point. Whatever may happen down in the future, I already told her I'm here for her. I'll always be here for her. But as long as she's living with him, that's just a negative situation that I don't want any parts of, and I don't want to be around.
Why would it be a negative situation? He's served his sentence. He's been released early from supervision.
Well, as of right now, he's back in prison.
So she's not with him, but
Yes.
you're not, but she doesn't, has she said to you she wants no contact?
Yes,
Okay. And you can respect that.
absolutely. It was hard, but I really, I understand and I respect that.
All right, because you don't know where her loyalties are, what she's been told, and how she understands the situation. So,
Yes.
when do you think you developed your moral compass? What helped you do that?
Programming and my wife, my support team, and just really looking into myself, finding who I really am, and knowing that I am a good person. I have made mistakes, but that doesn't define me. And I know that
I'm gonna two things.
Okay.
Shooting at an individual laying on the floor and putting a bullet in their back is not a mistake. As I described to you, sir, this is a series of choices that you made that got you to this point. So to say mistake is really to minimize your crime. What were the programs specifically that you think helped you reset or develop? Because I don't think you even had a moral compass.
A Way Out, Voices, and People Empowering People, I feel have impacted me the most out of all the programs that I've done.
Okay, well, I'm glad that you've gotten there, but I do have to point out that People Empowering People and Voices you took last year. So
Yes.
I'm hoping that there was some work you were doing on yourself well before 2024. I mean, you had
Yes.
your commutation denied in 2022 and your sentence mod denied in 2017. So,
Yes.
you know, all right.
Yes, Madam Chair, are you also questions?
Yes, I think we're done.
To my knowledge, there's no victim input in today's hearing, so we're going to move forward with allowing the attorneys present the opportunity to make a statement. We'll begin with State's Attorney Watson. If you have any comments or statements you'd like to make, you may do so now.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for your time. So what strikes me in reading all of the DIS summary as it pertains to Mr. Gilhooly is there are several letters of reference or support from family members pertaining to Mr. Gilhooly. These are direct family members of Mr. Gilhooly. He had an opportunity to engage with those family members and decide a different way of attaining his life when he committed this crime. I look at this situation as exactly the way this panel described it. Mr. Gilhooly was hunting for another individual. He went there armed with a purpose, with an illegal gun, a firearm he shouldn't have had. When they tried to shoot one of the unarmed individuals that were homeless and fighting just to survive, the gun jammed. They took the opportunity to reload that firearm and discharge it again, shooting one person, seriously wounding them. They went downstairs next, racked the firearm again, and shot another defenseless human being laying on the ground, and he is dead as a result. He went there with a purpose to look for someone that burglarized his home, yet he shot 2 individuals that he didn't even know. If that isn't the definition of a callous and a morally reprehensible act, I don't know what is. It's beyond careless. It shows a total lack of control. These 2 individuals were merely just existing and living and trying to make a living and eke out their existence. And he took that from them when they discharged a firearm in their direction, killing one and seriously wounding another. Preying on another human being is one thing. Preying on a defenseless, helpless human being is another that you don't know. And that's what Mr. Gilhooly did. He preyed on 2 individuals that were defenseless and unknown to him, mainly and merely because he was upset that someone burglarized his home. The lack of self-control and awareness is astounding, especially based upon where Mr. Gilhooly came from, the letters of support from family members indicating they'd be there for him. They could have been there for them then. We don't know. I haven't heard whether they were or whether they were not. But Mr. Gilhooly had the opportunity to take advantage of that. He had the opportunity to disavow himself from gang affiliation several times. The first being when he was arrested and charged with an offense in Massachusetts and convicted of that crime, and he was affiliated. Came into the Department of Corrections, affiliated. Was in the Department of Corrections, affiliated again. Finally jumped out of the gang. Multiple opportunities have been given to Mr. Gilhooly to change his way of life. Now, I credit Mr. Gilhooly, and I do. I've appeared in front of this panel numerous times, and this panel is well aware that I do not stand on every single hearing such as these and ask this panel to consider not granting the release. I've done it on numerous occasions, and this panel is aware of that. However, Mr. Gilhooly had his opportunity for a sentence modification. It was denied unanimously. He had his opportunity for a commutation hearing, and that was also denied unanimously. And I will quote what the commutation hearing, the result of it was. After lengthy review and testimony, the board voted unanimously to deny a commutation. The board specifically noted your 2018 disciplinary report and the continuation of your sentence being in the best interest of justice. I submit to this panel, nothing has changed since then. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Watson. At this time, Attorney Wilson, if you have any remarks you'd like to make, you may do so now.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. There are some remarks I'd like to make in response, and then I do have a prepared statement. I think that Peter here is having trouble explaining the why of the crime because he understands that there is no reasoning for what happened. That's something we've discussed several times. Every time has been a conversation about how there's no justification. He knows that. So I think that that's why he's having trouble putting into words why this senseless crime happened, because there is no excuse. There's no why, other than I do appreciate that he, didn't have any sense of what the value of life at the time. And I do truly believe that he has developed that understanding in his life since this happened. I also want to clarify, Mr. Gilhooly mentioned mistakes. I don't believe he was referring to this crime as a mistake. It was the mistakes of the getting tickets, stuff like that. He has never once in our conversations stated that this crime was a mistake. He has always taken responsibility that it was his actions. So I just wanted to clarify that. So I do have a prepared statement. So first, I would like to echo his thanks for the consideration of this board in his parole. As demonstrated by the submission provided to this board and his statement, and responses to your questions. I think it's obvious that he's accomplished many things during his time in the Department of Corrections. But I think it's really important to note that what the submission can't show you, and even, you know, the brief interactions that you guys are having with him here, is the real person behind the person who accomplished all these things and committed the crime. And I feel very lucky to have been able to get to know Peter during the preparation of this hearing. And I'd like to just give you a little insight into what I have learned about him. So the first thing that struck me about our first meeting was how insightful he was. Our first conversation was obviously very difficult because it required us to discuss the senseless actions that led him here, as well as his time in the Departments of Corrections and the struggles he has faced personally. During that conversation, he responded to my questions honestly and thoughtfully, and demonstrated a clear understanding and remorse for what happened. He has never made any excuses to me in our conversations for any of his actions or behaviors from the crimes through his time in DOC. And I was truly impressed by the gracious way he handled that difficult conversation with someone he had never met. The next quality that I think is really important and that defines Peter is the way he cares for others. He is dedicated to being a good husband and friend and family member. Despite the barrier of being in the Department of Corrections, he's maintained these relationships. He reconnected and married his wife, who's been an instrumental part in preparing this submission. And, you know, she has worked tirelessly to make sure he has a safe and stable place to go home to if he is released. They make a great team, and I do think that they are both dedicated to his success if released, both willing to do therapy, you know, work on themselves and their relationship with each other. Finally, I want to highlight Peter's kindness. Every interaction I've observed between him and other inmates, COs, has been pleasant and kind, and he has always been very kind and gracious to me. You know, preparing this submission and preparing for this hearing is not an easy thing to go through. It brings up a lot of tough conversations, a lot of difficult emotions, and I do want to highlight he discussed his move away from aggression, and I've asked some pretty invasive questions of him, and every single response has been thoughtful, kind. Never once has he gotten angry or responded in a way that was inappropriate. He's always been very, very open, you know, calm, respectful. And every time I leave our meetings, I think that this is, you know, just gives an idea of his character. He tells me to be safe, drive safe, and be good. I can say without a doubt that he's committed to being successful outside of the Department of Corrections. He has realistic plans and backups if those initial plans do not work. He also has had the opportunity to correspond and reconnect with family who I think he didn't have great connections with at the time of this incident, as well as friends and other community members. And I've had the opportunity to speak with many of these people as well. And I'm confident that they're willing to support him through all challenges that are going to arise. And he understands that there are challenges that will arise. He does have multiple job opportunities, which were outlined in letters of support submitted to the board. And he does have a realistic plan for helping support himself and his family. In closing, I'd like to reiterate that he has demonstrated immense growth, insightfulness, and kindness throughout his time in preparing this hearing and in the Department of Corrections as a whole. And I do think he deserves a chance to contribute positively in his community outside of the Department of Corrections. So I thank you again for your consideration. And I know he does as well.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, so if you'll just bear with us for a few minutes, we're going to discuss, and we'll be back with you shortly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So there's no disputing the horrific nature of what went down in November of 1999 in New Britain through the actions of Mr. Gilhooly and his co-defendant. I think part of what disturbs me most is when I think about the fact that these individuals who were shot, there was no aid rendered to them for more than 12 hours. And to think of the individual who survived his wounds, laying there, perhaps praying for help. Someone did come and he asked them for water, gave them a bottle. They left and never came back. So, when you take apart different crimes that we're exposed to in this work, there's sometimes different aspects that are more haunting than others. And that is a visual that I have from this crime that is absolutely heartbreaking. That the suffering went on, that they were alone. They weren't even on the same floor of the house. And anyway, so, that's why I was asking Mr. Gilhooly about, his moral compass, because I think at the time, at age 18, with the choices that he was making out in the community to sell drugs, to be gang affiliated, to abuse drugs himself, to abandon his own education, were all indications that he had no morality to lead his life by. I think we're seeing someone who has grown, immense growth, his attorney describes it as. I don't think we would see the evaluations for his work and the different positions in the facility being as strong as they were if he hadn't brought about some much needed change in his life, and his way of thinking, and his respect for humanity. I'm looking at an end of sentence date in 2034. So this is as much as 9 years of potential supervision for Mr. Gilhooly in the community. He was eligible 4 years ago under this statute that didn't exist then. With the limitations of incarceration, I think he's done quite well to create a strong release plan. The fact that he has the supports he has is real grace in his life. He has served nearly 25 years of the 35-year sentence. And taking into consideration the intent of this law that brought us to this hearing today, I would be willing to grant Mr. Gilhooly discretionary parole release. Mr. Rodriguez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a very difficult case and a very difficult situation. And as I shared earlier, I can't imagine what those gentlemen went through, the horror and the fear that particular evening. And I think Mr. Gilhooly, said that he did not have any respect for life at that point in time. And it's just really kind of a hard offense to comprehend. But having said that, I agree. He has shown some growth, taken programming, has done some mentoring work, worked at a COVID unit as part of this
Giving back,
which I also may have opened his eyes to, the issue of death and dying. I think he mentioned that as well, that he did kind of open his eyes to that. He did talk about remorse and responsibility. I agree. He has 9 years of supervision left. He would have 9 years of supervision if we'd let him out. And of course, he'd be, back if he did something. He'd be back in and serve the rest of his time. I would be willing to grant discretionary parole, but I do have a challenge with the offense in this case, but I would be willing to grant just to help they, would use the supervision and use the parole officer in a way that really helps him put his life back together again, and create that opportunity for him to be able to share this story with other individuals, like he said, to help make a difference, because there's so many things going on in the streets today.
Ms. Chance.
So while I agree that Mr. Gilhooly has currently changed his background and has begun to give back, and I do agree with you, serving during COVID was a pretty monumental moment for him. He is on the right path that he needs to be on. But for me, the nature of the offense, it is just absolutely so egregious. And the fact that, the SRG ticket in December of 2018 certainly does not sit well with me. And so for me today, it would be a denial. I would be in favor of hearing him in a couple of years, but that's where I am today.
So this will be a majority decision. As far as conditions, I have no contact with the co-defendant. As a juvenile, do we say the co-defendant's name in the record?
Don't think so.
Okay. And the surviving victim, we have those initials. And although he is self-motivated, I am going to suggest the mental health evaluation and treatment is deemed necessary. Was there anything else by way of conditions that either of you had?
Took anger management, but it was back in 2006.
No. He is going to his wife in Vernon.
Yeah.
So I think that pretty much said. I know his mental health status is a one, and I probably could have asked about it before.
Well, he talked about counseling and how important he thinks therapy can
So
be.
he would
and
do that on its own.
No, I have it as a step because I want to have some confidence that it's going to happen and not, possibly get lost in the priorities, given some of the
So that's
trouble
what
that
I
it's had. Okay. All right. So in the matter of Peter Gilhooly, inmate number 279038, there is a motion to grant parole on or after today's date of January 24th, 2025. With the following conditions for your supervision. You're to have a mental health evaluation and engage in treatment as deemed necessary. You're to have no contact with your co-defendant, initials IOE, and you're to have no contact with the victim, initials WM. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed?
Nay.
So Mr. Gilhooly, we wish you much success out in the community. We hope you'll build a very strong relationship with your parole officer and stay in communication with them, especially if you start to struggle with any aspects of living out back in the community.
I will, thank you.
Public Act 23. It is 11:40 a.m. Thank you, everybody.
Oh, that's 20 minutes.
Thank you.